And speaking of the earthquake, meteorologist Christian Bridges is joining us to break down this quake and how it compares to some of the strongest in recorded history.
Yeah, 8.8, that is amazing how big that is.
Yes, if you guys remember the big one that hit Japan, that huge tsunami and earthquake, that crazy natural disaster from about 15 years ago, this is very comparable to that in terms of the intensity of the earthquake. And, you know, we had a tsunami with that one that hit Hawaii and went all the way to the west coast of the U.S. And it looks like this one is doing it the same. So yeah, once in a couple decades sort of event. Really, really powerful quake. Kind of amazing to see just how strong it was. Very surprising last night. I was like on my phone and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, earthquake. And not just any old earthquake, a really incredibly powerful one.
I covered the Loma Linda quake, October of 1989 in the San Francisco Bay Area. That was 6.9.
Right.
And everyone's seen the damage that did with part of the Bay Bridge came down. I mean, it'll be crazy when we maybe start seeing some images come out of whatever this hit in Russia with an 8.8.
The thing is though, luckily, unlike the one in Japan, which hit off of Japan, which is, you know, very populated, this hit on a very unpopulated area, which is good news. So at the very least, you know, we have at least less people affected by it, but still, I mean, it sent a tsunami all the way across the Pacific, and people in Hawaii were evacuating last night or yesterday afternoon for them, as it was still daytime there up into the mountains. So yeah, really quite crazy to see. And yeah, I've got a map showing where exactly that earthquake took place. Magnitude 8.8. This was at 9:27 p.m. last night. This is called the Kamchatka Peninsula in Russia, and just to the east there is actually Alaska. Kind of hard to tell where this is exactly, but it's a far northwest Pacific Ocean. That peninsula, thankfully, very depopulated, but definitely has had some effects there. I saw tsunami waves approaching 20 feet there on the Kamchatka Peninsula, and up to upwards of 6 to 10 feet tsunami waves were reported in Hawaii overnight last night. So yeah, really incredibly powerful earthquake. In fact, it was in the top 10 strongest earthquakes that we've ever seen on planet Earth, which is really crazy to see. The strongest was back in Chile in 1960. That was a 9.5. The Japan one that I mentioned a little bit ago, that was in March 2011. Had a magnitude of 9.1. You may also remember the day after Christmas earthquake and tsunami back in 2004 in the Indian Ocean, devastated Thailand and Indonesia. That one was also 9.1, and then this one tied for 6th strongest earthquake on record, 8.8 magnitude with that Russia quake last night. So really rare to get an earthquake of this magnitude, or just not very common. It's a once in every couple decades sort of event. So let's talk about how strong this earthquake was. And something that's really interesting I find about earthquake magnitude is that going from 5 to 6 doesn't mean that, you know, it's one time or twice as strong. It's 10 times as strong for each level of magnitude that you go up. So a level 3 to 4 earthquake, a level 4 earthquake, magnitude 4, is 10 times stronger than a magnitude 3 earthquake. So yeah, there's only about one magnitude 8 earthquake a year, and this was an 8.8, so really we can round that up to a magnitude 9. Yeah, we only get an earthquake like that about once every decade or so. So yeah, really notable quake, and yeah, it releases a ton of energy, really incredible. The amount of energy that this released into the ocean. That's where the tsunami comes from. The literal seafloor lifting up. This was called a mega thrust earthquake. The fault line there literally lifts up the ocean floor, and it forces all that water up, and then it causes that tsunami. As the wave gets closer to shore, it hits that shallower water, it grows to an incredibly high height, and then it slams into the shoreline. And that's what we've seen in Russia. And in fact, it was so powerful that it was able to send that tsunami all the way across the entire Pacific to the west coast. So kind of crazy, you guys, to get an earthquake like this, a once in every decade or so sort of event happened last night.
Well, and it's really scary especially when you hear the sirens, because a lot of people remember 2004, the one in Indonesia, and they made a movie out of it, The Impossible. And when you see even the images from that movie, that's scary stuff. Just thousands and thousands of people died, and the damage was just unbelievable.
You know, it's so interesting, you know, the Pacific with its ring of fire and all these volcanoes and seismically active areas is so different from the Atlantic Ocean, which just doesn't really have that. So, you know, we don't really have much of a tsunami threat here. Not saying that it couldn't happen, but it would be really, really incredibly rare for something like that to happen here. So, you know, kind of interesting the difference between the Pacific and the Atlantic.
Yeah, and hopefully just all the, you know, alerts went out to, you know, where they were needed, and that people who needed to evacuate have evacuated, because it sounds terrifying, because especially because it's just not something that we think about happening.
Can you imagine, like, you're just sitting on the waterfront in Portland, I don't know, eating a lobster roll, and all of a sudden you get a tsunami warning alert. I mean, that must be terrifying to have to go through.
Yeah, think about Hawaii, they were getting that, and the people scrambling to get to higher ground.
That's right.
So what's that happen overnight?
Yep. And if you've got any weather-related or earthquake-related questions you'd like to ask our Weather Authority team, you can always email us at weather@wgme.com.